At face value, the Wheel of Time prequel New Spring is a story about the birth of the dragon and Moiraine's early quest to find that child. But underlying that story is a more touching story. The story of how Lan and Moiraine first met and eventually Moiraine bonded Lan as her warder. Their interactions, and even more so their thoughts, were hilarious. And Robert Jordan dropped a clue as to the specific reason why Moiraine chose Lan. Let's dive in, starting at the beginning. When the story began, Lan thought to himself that amputating a leg may be better than getting healed by an Aes Sedai. That it was best to avoid Aes Sedai as much as possible because, years later, you could find one of them had strings tied to you just in case she might have need. When the Aiel War ended and Lan headed north, he specifically avoided Tar Valon. All he wanted was a return to the Blight and no encounters with Aes Sedai. In contrast, at the beginning of Moiraine's story, when she was still one of the Accepted, her friend Siuan Sanche began discussing warders. Moiraine was intrigued by the bond, wondering if Aes Sedai and warders could read each other's minds. After Moiraine was raised to Aes Sedai, she fled Tar Valon and went on a dangerous quest to find the Dragon Reborn by herself. During her travels, she came across a few Aes Sedai, including the legend herself, Cadsuane. Cadsuane saw that Moiraine had the potential to become one of the most powerful Aes Sedais, so she worried that Moiraine would get herself killed. Because of that, Cadsuane told Moiraine that since she did not have a warder, she should stay in Canluim a few days and let Mirian Sedai and Lorel Sedai escort her safely to Chachin. But then Siuan Sanche showed up in Canluim and told Moiraine that other searchers had died, or rather, they had been killed, probably by the Black Aja. That frightened Moiraine. She thought to herself that she wished she were Green Aja and had 3 or 4 warders to guard her back right then and there. So basically, Siuan had talked about warders. Moiraine was intrigued by the warder bond. Cadsuane advised Moiraine to bond a warder and to choose that warder wisely. And Moiraine began to fear that the Black Aja would kill her for searching for the Dragon Reborn. As a result of all that, right before she met Lan, Moiraine wanted a warder. Meanwhile, Lan wanted nothing to do with Aes Sedai. That leads us into part 2, the road to Chachin. Moiraine snuck out of Canluim against Cadsuane's orders. Moiraine trailed a group of 3 men, one being Lan. Eventually, Lan's 2 companions rode off, and Moiraine tried to sneak up on Lan and grab his sword, but he was too quick, so he threw her into a pond. He then pulled her out, she dried off, and she paid the 3 men to escort her safely to Chachin. That night, Moiraine overheard Lan use the term Aes Sedai in a derogatory way, so she used the one power to shoot water at him. She then told him that she was Aes Sedai, but Lan did not believe her. While they traveled to Chachin, Moiraine began to probe so as to find out Lan's backstory, to no avail. Moiraine also harassed Lan each night by using the one power to have insects attack him. The reason that she did that was because Moiraine wanted a display of remorse for dunking her. She wanted an apology, and she wanted him to give her the proper regard for an Aes Sedai. The pranks bothered Lan, but he pretended not to care so as to not give Moiraine the satisfaction of annoying him. And part of Moiraine admired Lan's fortitude. One day, while Moiraine was brainstorming what to do to Lan next, they were attacked. Lan was shot through the shoulder, and the first thing that Moiraine did was use the one power to shield him from further attacks. Moiraine shielded Lan before herself, and at the time, she did not understand why. That was just her instinct. Lan then charged the attacker as if he did not already have an arrow sticking through him. Moiraine was impressed. Then, when they removed the arrow from Lan, he blinked. That's it. No yell, no wince, just a blink. And because Moiraine was annoyed with him at the time, it sort of annoyed her that he was so tough. Moiraine thought to herself that she had only 2 more nights to crack him, because once they reached Chachin, she would be too busy to attend to Lan Mandragoran. At least, for a time she would be. That was the first clue that Moiraine had already planned on bonding him. The next section of this video occurs after they reach the city of Chachin. When they got to Chachin, Moiraine tried to pay him for the safe escort, but he told her to keep her coin and considered her offer to pay as yet another insult. Lan then rode off quickly, thinking to himself that he was glad to be rid of Moiraine. Moiraine saw how quickly Lan rode off and complimented herself for having made an impression on him. After they split up, Lan thought to himself that he was glad, since he wanted nothing to do with Moiraine, especially if she really was Aes Sedai. But Lan kept thinking about her. He could not get Moiraine out of his head. Then, after taking care of some personal business, he began to think about Moiraine a second time. Later, Lan read the two women were flogged by Aes Sedai for claiming to be Aes Sedai when they were not, and he found himself hoping that Moiraine was Aes Sedai. He wondered why he should care, so clearly Lan liked her, but he was not yet ready to admit it to himself. Meanwhile, Moiraine experienced similar emotions. At one point, her best friend Swan Sanche was annoying her, and Moiraine thought to herself that a bear with a sore tooth would have been better company than her. Even Lan would have been better company. So clearly, Moiraine liked Lan just as he liked her. Later on, Moiraine found out that Lan was a king, or rather, he could be a king if he so choose. That shocked her, so she immediately excused herself from that conversation in order to get some alone time. Moiraine then saw Lan training with his shirt off, and she noticed claw marks on his back. She told herself that she was not jealous, but in a way, she was. She then asked Lan to help her spy on Moiraine Sedai. At first, he said no, because back in the day, Aes Sedai had told his people that they would come and help fight the Shadow Spawn, but the Aes Sedai never showed. So Lan held a grudge, a very personal grudge. He blamed the Aes Sedai for the fall of Malkier, the fall of his family and his people. But Moiraine opened up to him, telling him that the Aes Sedai did send help. They were just too late. Afterwards, the Aes Sedai kept it a secret since it was better that people thought the Aes Sedai did nothing rather than the Aes Sedai tried and failed. Moiraine also apologized on behalf of the Aes Sedai, despite the fact that this happened before she was even born. Because of this, Lan agreed to help her spy on Moiraine Sedai. Meanwhile, Lady Edain was attempting to marry Lan to her daughter Isella. Lan did not want that, and thought that the only thing to do when faced with an opponent you could not defeat was run. Lan wanted to run, but his friend Bukama held him there. Bukama and a dream. Next up, the fight. Turns out, Moiraine Sedai was Black Aja, so Lan and Moiraine fought her and Lan's friend Rhine, who turned out to be a dark friend. Rhine was better than Lan. He disabled Lan's sword arm, and he thought that the fight was all but finished. But according to Lan, Rhine never understood. Quote, "You surrender after you're dead." In other words, Lan kept fighting and he killed Rhine. Afterwards, Moiraine healed him with the One Power. When she did so, Lan gasped. But unlike the time with the arrow, when she was annoyed that all he did was blink when they pulled it out, this time, Moiraine got no satisfaction from Lan showing that he was mortal. Now, the ending. Lan rode off for the Blight. Most likely, Lan was riding off to his death. But Moiraine had other plans for him, so she chased after him, found him, and bonded him. It turns out, Moiraine had known that she would bond Lan from the very first day they met. So let's go back and figure out the exact moment. As we already went over, when Moiraine and Lan first met, he threw her into a pond. So she was wet. They made a fire, she took off her clothes, and he put up blankets for her to stand behind. Then, Rhine and Bukama came back to camp. Moiraine overheard Rhine saying that he'd like to see her without her clothes on. Then, Moiraine heard another sound. Steel whispering on leather. A sword leaving its sheath. So she immediately prepped some defensive weaves and then peeked out of the blankets. Lo and behold, it was Lan who had drawn the sword. Lan stood with his back to her, and with his sword out, Lan chastised Rhine for such a lewd comment about her body. Then, later, when Moiraine used the One Power to throw water on Lan, he thought that they were being attacked, so he immediately yelled out to his boys to protect her. Since Robert Jordan stated that Moiraine knew that she would bond Lan the first day that they met, these were probably the reasons why she made that choice. Because The very first day that they met, Lan sprang to her defense 2 times. The first 2 times of many times.